It's just you're here. You're just a witness of life as it's happening. And we can do this and we can return to this whenever we want. It was one of the most blissful states I've had in a long time. My Aya story and the irony of its meaninglessness. So recently I did ayahuasca, and this has been my 4th time doing ayahuasca. The first time I got my ass kicked, had a panic attack, and then the shaman made me had a 3rd drink, and then I realized that the world is suffering, and as an artist and a creator I can help tell the story of that. And most of my Aya experiences has resulted in me learning that my purpose is to enhance the beauty of humanity, and to do so not simply by talking about love and avoiding the pain, but simply by embracing the truth that makes us human. And so I wish to share with you my last Aya experience and the truth and the humanness in it. So I've been through a hell of a year. Broke up with the longest relationship I've ever had, deepest relationship, most loving. That can be another story, whether or not I self-sabotaged for my own comfort and resistance to growth. Actually, that's relevant to this story. And also, my mother got diagnosed with cancer and died within this past year. And I was heavily invested in crypto and did not sell, so lost a lot of crypto. But I'm at the point where I'm stronger in my resilience and my self-love. So I was faithful and confident enough to say yes to Aya. On New Year's, I saw my Aya shaman randomly at a party. An Aya shaman, a wonderful woman, Kira, beautiful singer, Russian, and she's Russian and Ukrainian actually. And so I said, "Hey, do you have any ceremonies coming up?" And she said, "Yes." And I said, "Great, when?" And she said, "Next weekend." And I said, "Okay, let's go." Mind you, ayahuasca is now $750. 3 years ago, it was $450, and that's for 2 nights plus food, accommodation, sleeping on a mattress in a circle. So I was nervous. It's funny, I was on a carnivore diet. I had to stop that because you can't really eat a ton of meat when you're doing the dieta for Aya. And the first night, you have to set an intention. And my intention was to, I don't know if my intention was good enough. My intention was to surrender. Specifically, I've had pain in my gut for a long time. And I recently realized that I got tested positive for parasites, so I've been on that parasite cleanse. But also, I feel like the pain in my gut is my ex-girlfriend, Zoe. And it's been really hard to release that. And I feel like I'm carrying her inside me. And so I wanted to ask Aya, what can I do to release and to surrender and to let go? And yeah, so we started the ceremony. You sit quietly, there's no talking, so the agreement is don't make noise, do your own thing, and we're literally not going to talk until noon the next day, so you can just stay in your process and not distract each other. So we drank the first drink, and I'm sitting there, and at this point I've done ayahuasca a few times, so I know to not try to fight it, to not try to get anything out of it, but just to let it happen. And it's a constant practice of learning how to surrender and surrender and surrender, which is really hard for a control freak, perfectionist director like me. And so the first drink, I felt it slowly going through my body, and it's heavy. It just makes you feel heavy. And then I'm just kind of in this process, which isn't really doing a whole lot. it's just, I'm just feeling and thinking, oh, what my life has been, what my relationship has been, how am I going to move forward with this relationship? Can I fully let go of this person? Or can I fully commit to this person? Because I'm scared of both. There's a safety in that relationship, I think, that is romanticized and beautiful. And it's been the most beautiful relationship. So nothing really happened after the first drink, but then the second drink, I'm a little nervous. I already know that the Aya is in me. I'm actually the second person in the circle, so I was one of the second person to have a second drink out of like 15 people. And the second I drank it, I get back to my bed and I start releasing into a DMT release, which is and has been the biggest challenge I've ever had in my entire life, I would say. 2013, I did 5-MeO DMT, in which I smoked vaporized frog venom with this shaman, and 5-MeO DMT is probably the most crazy thing you could do. I disappeared for 45 minutes doing things and not knowing that I existed while I was doing things, and then I realized that I was in a body standing there, and that fear existed, and that humor existed, and it was traumatic, the fact that I could be doing things and not know that I'm doing them. And then I had another traumatic experience last Valentine's Day last year, where I had a shaman say, "Oh, you haven't had a full DMT release? Come here, let me put you in a room and force you to smoke my vaporizer, and you inhale it and you inhale it and you inhale it until the point where you disappear." And I trusted him, but it was not an intentional moment. It was not a grounded moment. And I got to the point where my visuals were starting to see I was disappearing into fractal land. And I got extremely anxious, and I had to tell him to stop. I didn't want to disappear. I didn't want to lose control. I didn't feel I had the strength. And then after that, I felt extremely guilty that I didn't have the strength and the courage. And going back to last weekend's Aya journey, I had the same experience, where that second cup, I get back to my seat and I'm letting go, and I'm on the veil of existence, where things are turning into fractals, unexplainable white patterns, light, and my ego, is it an ego? My witness voice is telling me, surrender, let go, it's okay. And then I would be almost disappear into what's called the full DMT release, into the veil of the other reality. And then my ego would say, no, this is too much. This is too much. I don't think you can handle this. This is too scary. You can't let go of your identity and your self. And I nearly threw up. I've never thrown up with Aya. And I suddenly went over and dry heaved into my bucket. But that kind of woke me up enough. If you're moving enough, then the DMT can't really get to you. If you're still enough, then you can surrender enough to it. But by then, the medicine had been not as strong in that few minutes. And I had gotten into my head too much that I never got a chance to have the full DMT release. By the way, side note, the guy next to me did. And he said it was the scariest thing he's ever experienced, where it's he was nobody in no time, in no place. And he had no control. And Aya was just like, you don't have control. I'm running the show. And I think there's a part of me that just can't get there. And so that whole first night, I felt extremely guilty, like I was a coward, and I judged the shit out of myself for not having the strength to experience the full DMT release and fully let go of my reality. For those of you who've never done Aya, maybe you're like, fuck yeah, dude, that would fucking suck. That's, of course it's scary. But I feel like there's like the universe is knocking at my door being like, it's like an initiation. And I feel like I am not constantly, but there's this initiation moment that I'm too afraid to do. So I barely could sleep that night because I was judging myself about how I haven't had the courage to commit to a wife, commit to buying a home, and commit to taking my career to the ultimate level that I've always dreamed of, that I haven't gotten to yet. And I feel like Aya is a symbol of, in a weird way, that I won't be able to get there until I fully let go. Because in order to get married, you have to let that single free version of yourself die. In order to buy a house, you have to let the rent-paying, lower responsibility version of yourself die. In order to live your dream in your career, you have to know that if you fail, then that'll be weird. If you have a dream that you fail at, I guess you have to let that go. The fact that you could fail and that your whole lifelong dream, you're not good enough to achieve it. But not trying it is failure in all of those aspects. So I felt like shit that night, and I woke up the next day and I was like, okay, I'm going to do Aya for a second night, because you always do it more than once. If you go to the jungle in South America or wherever, you sometimes do it up to 10 days, every other day, usually. So the second night, we go around and we state our intentions, and I said, okay, and I talked to the shaman, and I was like, how do I do this? And she was like, number one, you're not supposed to necessarily have a full DMT release. This ayahuasca is a very emotional process. You don't have to disappear. And I'm like, okay, cool. But if I do, I do. And then she was like telling me, you know, I think like that the fear is okay. Basically, my intention that second night was to be a king and a child at the same time, or a parent and a child at the same time, and for me to be approaching that veil of losing reality, and for my observer self to speak to my fearful child self and say, it's okay, you're safe. And also for me to go from, it's one thing to say I surrender, but it's another thing to say, take me, take me, take me. And so as I had that first drink, I could feel that bubble of crossing the chasm. And it was really confusing because I was like, oh, I want this. Take me, take me. And then at this same exact time, I was like, oh, I don't want this. Just like I could want to get married to a specific woman and don't want it at the same time. I could want to buy a house and don't want it at the same time. Which was, you know, I think the world's problems lie in that gray area, in that void of indecision, where there's parts of you that want something and parts of you that want the comfort of not changing, not being able to take the leap. And so as I was coaching myself and approaching this, I got to a point where I was like, well, what is fear? Fear is false evidence appearing real. Fear is a story. And then I was like, well, what if I threw away the story? Threw away the past trauma I had with 5-MeO-DMT, the past trauma I had on Valentine's Day with NN-DMT. There's a bunch of different types of DMT. NN is the vaporized smoke one. And then there's ayahuasca, which is ayahuasca. My camera just died. Hold on. Be right back. Okay, we're back. Sorry, I literally this is a new thing for me. Vlogging. YouTubing. So, man, we were right at the peak. Okay, so here's... The universe is so funny. See, God is everywhere. So, this is the big reveal that I discovered. So, I said, okay, well, fear is a story. When we are afraid of something, we are afraid of an infinite amount of scary things that aren't real. And I realized that when we have a story, we are basically giving our power away to something that isn't truth. A story is us giving meaning to something that isn't true, with the only thing being true is the here and the now. And so when I was afraid to enter the other side of the DMT release of non-existence, I have an innate fear that it is going to be bad and then I'm going to lose a part of myself. It's just like this feeling. And so I'm like, well, maybe I can get to the other side by just eliminating all stories and essentially all judgments, because the night before, not being able to get there, I was highly judgmental of myself for being a coward, for being too afraid to disappear into the nothingness. And I'm like, okay, well, what is a story? And to me, I had this feeling like a story is to store It's like storing energy. You're storing energy somewhere outside of you, and you're giving your power away. Think about how many times in life when we're anything other than unconditionally blissful, and that is usually when we are storing energy into a story that's outside of us. And this could be in the form of judging something or judging ourselves, but basically giving meaning to something, which is a made-up meaning that you and your ego or whatever is claiming has truth to it. And then the question you ask yourself is, well, what is truth? Your truth, it's your truth, but it's not the truth. The only truth is here and now, right now. So I said, okay, well, what if I took every story and every judgment and I suspended it and I pulled it away? And it's just like doing like a transcendental meditation or most meditations where you're just focused on your breath. You're focused on here, coming back. And you're basically throwing away and suspending all stories / judgments. So, just brightening my camera, it's getting dark. So then as I was lying there, literally just like against the wall, like motionless, processing all this. And as I got to a point of like not letting myself tell myself a story, it was hard. It was hard because I'm the observer. So it's meta. I'm observing me telling myself a story about observing me telling myself a story. But I got there a few times, and when I did get there, it was a sudden change in energy, and I could feel, under the ayahuasca medicine, I could feel the electricity in my body, and it was if when I'm thinking, the electricity is going like this. And then when I can get to a place of no thought, the electricity stops. And it's like going from sympathetic to parasympathetic. I think I said that right. And it makes me think like when we're awake, we are like the cortisol is rushing through us and we are constantly thinking, and our body is just in this energized vibration of living and doing, but we can't heal in that moment. We can't heal when we're attached to a story. We can't. When we're hanging on, we're attached to anything. Gabor Mate says that you can't have attachment and authenticity at the same time. So, which is why we sleep. Because when we sleep, our brains turn off and our bodies can finally be in that resting vibration, in that healing vibration. But what if we could be awake and be in that vibration? And that night, that second night of ayahuasca, I taught myself how to do this. And basically, I had to suspend and dissolve and evaporate every single story, every single judgment about my past, about my identity, mostly about like what people thought of me. And I was left just in this warm light of relaxation and comfort. And then it got me out of my head and into the present. And then I realized, wow, this music is good. I want to hear it in more detail. I want to get lost in the beauty of existence around me. And so I picked up my 2 blankets, one for underneath and one for above me, moved into the center of the circle, right in front of the musicians. I brought my pillows, and then I just lied there, listening to the music. And I was just present. And then as I was present, I was like, oh, what's my body feeling? Oh, wow, my legs are pretty tight. Like, what if I started stretching? And then I just went into this like child's pose. And I was basically just like this like rock in the middle of the ceremony as the female and 2 male musicians played beautiful music. And I didn't care what people thought. There was no story or judgment around what people thought. I was just here. I was just being, and it was the most free thing, and it made me kind of think about all the drama that I've ever held on to, and I just kind of laughed at it. It was as if like this like ultimate kind of joke and state of play when you're in that present moment. And then the most incredible thing happened. And I'll try to say this without feeling pride or without feeling an ego, but this is just the observer. And before you knew it, I could feel a woman dancing next to me, above me, because I was kneeling down, face down, just in my own world. And then I could feel another one, and then time goes by, and the shaman starts laughing, and people are starting laughing, and I'm hearing women in Russian singing all around me. And I'm trying not to give a judgment of it. I'm trying not to give a story. I'm just there. It's as if I was a dog lying on the floor, just unconditionally loving and just being. I felt very much like a dog. And I think that dog energy, especially coming from the masculine, allowed these women to feel safe. I'm not taking all the credit, but I think I set an example of what it looked like to let go of judgment. Because I was being just kind of ridiculous, like who's this guy lying in the middle of the floor, like in his own world? but not being in his side bed in his own world. Like, I was showing an example of that. And it was crazy. And at one point the shaman says, the lotus doesn't blossom without the strength of the mountain. And she was clearly laughing and referring to me, and I could feel all these eyeballs on me. But I really kept going back to letting go. Don't do anything that doesn't feel right. Don't do anything for other people. Just be. And it reminded me of the saying, which is the ultimate kind of nirvana state, the ultimate kind of bliss state, which is just I am. It's not I am happy. It's not I am sad. It's not I am love. It's just I am. There is no happy, sad, love. It's just you just exist now. That is the ultimate state. That is peace. That is authenticity. That is attachment. That is presence. That is unconditional love. There's no judgment. It's just you're here. You're just a witness of life as it's happening right here and right now. And we can do this, and we can return to this whenever we want. And it was one of the most blissful states I've had in a long time. To be there and to peek open my eyes and just see I was surrounded by dancing and singing people that were just enjoying themselves so much, and that I could just bathe in it. I could bathe in it. And I didn't have to try, and that was the whole point. I just was. And I'm sitting here thinking, and I'm surrounded by other people in the Aya circle who are crying and puking and so uncomfortable. 15 people in the circle, 4 shaman, 7 are dancing around me, and the others are deep in their process. My buddy Leo was literally in the greatest state of fear he's ever been in that full DMT state of nothingness. And I'm sitting here and I'm like, wow, this is crazy, because I feel like I have the secret weapon. Like, all these people have to do is take all their trauma and all their pain and just like ignore it. And here I am thinking I'm some sort of savior by having that kind of answer. And my buddy Greg, meanwhile, the first night he was shaking and tremoring and crying and puking, and he was having such a struggle. And I can hear him doing it again tonight. And I'm like, man, I should tell Greg what I've discovered. Like, what does it look like to just get rid of all your stories and be here? And then I'm like, well, I don't need to do that. That's a story that I should tell Greg. Like, I don't owe anyone anything. When you're just in the infinite now of that, you don't owe anyone anything. I don't need to save anyone. I don't need to help anyone. Not myself, not anybody. But eventually, probably maybe because the medicine was starting to wear off, I made it over to Greg and gave him a big hug, because I just felt love. And then I told him, I was like, I figured it out. Like just try this. What happens if you get rid of your stories? Later, I was talking to Leo, and he was like, oh yeah, my dad and I don't talk. Man, I am just such a horrible YouTuber right now. This is my first video. I'm just using my webcam now. It's funny, it's like actually probably look better because can't see my detailed wrinkles anymore. Okay, so I'll wrap this up. But I was like, Leo, you want to heal with your dad, and you have all this trauma that has been created. What if, in order to heal with your dad, you didn't even mention the past? You didn't give it power. You didn't store energy in it. And he was like, yeah. And later I was telling the shaman, they were like, oh my God, like, wow, what a crazy thing to think about, just letting go. And it was as if I felt at the time like it has given me my answers, at least for that night. I felt bliss, and it was beautiful. And it's been 2 weeks now since doing that Aya. And life is tough. I'm facing a lot of challenges with a film that I'm trying to finish, that the client keeps being too afraid. Well, the client's being responsible by taking it out because it has scary scenes in it. And I'm getting frustrated, and it's because I'm so attached to an outcome. And with my ex-lover, Zoe, I'm attached to an outcome of being accepted, being loved. But I know that all of these things are my interpretations of a need for belonging, a need to be accepted, a need for love. And maybe I can ask myself, well, why am I holding on to these stories? Because if I drop into the now, I can, no matter what people do to me to hurt me, I could hang on to my interpretation of that pain based on some kind of expectation or some kind of judgment or some kind of story where I'm not good enough, or they are the villain because. But if I'm doing those things, then I'm not in an I am state. I'm in an I am hurt state. I am scared. And obviously we can't be living in a state of unattachedness our whole lives. We have to function. We have to care. We have to be nervous to motivate ourselves. And I don't have an answer other than to blend the two, perhaps, and say that, yes, I am scared, but then there's a part of you that can hold that and see that without judgment, and know that that story that you're telling yourself of why you are scared is not here and now, ever. Even if you're being chased by a tiger, you are so scared, but in that moment, you're not being eaten by the tiger. You're not dead. And I realized through this second night of doing ayahuasca and having had chronic stomach pains this year that I can't figure out, what if I let go of the story and let go of the judgment, even around death? Death is obviously the most scary thing for humanity because it is the most unknown thing for humanity. But what if we just look at death and say, death is? It just is. And I say this after having my mother die this year and being with her the entire time, helping her die. and the entire year trying to save her from death. And as she came closer and closer to death, we avoided talking about it because we looked at it as bad. And maybe that made things worse the whole year. And if I could do it all over again, man, did my mother have so many stories. This treatment, that cancer treatment, this holistic treatment, what about this person's opinion? It's like she died of stories, and she did. She did. It was the stress of attachment that killed her. Attachment to her ex-husband, attachment to her daughter. Stuff I don't need to get into. But think about what causes you stress these days, and how you aren't allowing yourself ease. That stress is causing dis-ease. And what if we could all let go of the attachment and the control and the story around it? And I'll say this to my future self, and I'm saying this in grief. The day you get married or live your dream or buy a house and do all these, the day you achieve the full release of DMT and are not afraid of it, that day doesn't matter. It's a paradox because I'm putting energy around it, but that's part of what happened that second night of ayahuasca. It's like I don't need to hold energy on it. So it doesn't matter. And maybe if you let go of needing to achieve your dream, that's when you'll actually do it. Because you won't be tied down in this perfectionistic control of an outcome. And you can allow it to happen, and you can have it rather than need it. Thanks for watching, and may you have a present day, and may you take everything that you hate about yourself or someone else and simply throw it away so that you can just enjoy what is. Take care.